Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it Mind Cake.
Hello everybody and welcome to another slice of Mind Cake. Mind Cake with me, Lee Crompton. It's 2025, folks. First one of the new year. Hope you have all had a decent Christmas and New Year. I know for some people it's a very relaxing time where they can get away from work. And we did have some relaxing times, but also there's quite a lot of stress and quite a lot of reflection. And I don't personally do very well this time of year. So if you're struggling and if you've had to go back to work and got the January blues, then hopefully we'll be here to give you a bit of a lift and a bit of a laugh. And very much looking forward to sharing this episode with you with Dr. Aaron Balick, who is amazing. And I wanted to get him on sooner or release his episode sooner because we recorded this episode before the elections. American elections, I should say. So it was a while ago, but I've held off releasing it as I thought it was probably better to release this at the start of the year when people are hopefully reflecting and maybe making choices about how much they use tech and social media, because when it comes to that sort of thing, Aaron is the man. So yes, without waffling on anymore, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with the wonderful Dr. Aaron Balick. Okay, so our guest today is psychotherapist, consultant, and author of the Psychodynamics of Social Networking. It's Dr. Aaron Balick. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming on, because I know you're a very busy man. I've got so much to ask you. And I suppose, obviously, the main thing that you sort of discuss is social media. Shall we start with that? How do you see the digital culture influencing our mental health on a day-to-day basis? Because it can help us. We'll get into this later, but it can help us and it can obviously very much hinder us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really big question. I could fill up the hour.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll just wind you up and let you go for an hour.
Okay. I'll make a start and we can see what direction we go off in.
Cool.
But the way I kind of conceptualize this in this moment is that we are the digitally mediated human these days, right? So the digital world mediates our relations to others and in a way mediates our relationship to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that's been mediated has changed a ton over the past decade. I wrote the book, 10 years ago. It was published in 2014. I'm now revising it, so incorporating all sorts of new insights.
Okay.
But the main question really is and it doesn't have to be social media either. It could be AI, it could be email, it could be text messaging, it could be a dating app. How does any digital technology mediate a relationship between myself and somebody else? How is Zoom mediating our relationship right now, right? We've never met before, but we can only see each other's faces.
Yeah.
And then you think about any kind of technological platform and how it enables and disables different aspects of your psychology and emotional system. So every kind of platform is going to do something slightly different for that mediation. And that's kind of the basic, very short answer to your question.
Okay, so you're not talking about sort of algorithms at this point. You're talking about just how a personal connection is different from a digital connection. Is that right?
Well, this is one of the things that's changed massively over the past 10 years. So, right, in 2012 and 13, when I was writing the book, I'm looking mainly at things like Facebook, Twitter in its old days, LinkedIn, the beginning of Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And they were, I don't think they are anymore, right? They were social networks. So they tended, not Twitter less so. Well, it's a matter of scale, right? And this is where you have the different architectures of the platforms having making a difference.
Yeah.
But basically on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, there's a relatively known group of others with whom you're interacting,
Hmm.
and they're interacting with you. And it's a real social network.
Hmm.
The way algorithms work today is they mess around with that a lot more than they used to.
Used to.
So there's a lot less social networking going on. And if you're a young person on TikTok, for example, you're not really social networking. You're just consuming digital material that's collected and categorized by algorithms outside of your consciousness
Hmm.
or will.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit more like you're being drip fed, well, not drip fed, hose fed
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, it's weird because I mean, one of the questions I was going to come on to is that obviously trying to promote this podcast, I've started just as a kind of almost an experiment, really, to sign up to app, and we'll get onto apps later, but to apps like Blaze and Headliner, that where you can supposedly save you time, but you go down these rabbit holes of then putting out this social media content in the hope that that's going to then increase because we want to get the message out there, right? But you always find it's the same people that are liking, and it doesn't seem to matter really what hashtags you use or what time of day you put it out or whatever. In your, let's say, I'm going to using friends in inverted commas, but of your 1,000 friends on Facebook, you're probably, I only seem to be interacting with maybe, I don't know, 20 of them at most. It's the same
Hmm.
people. Is that done so that it's what do they call it, sort of a feedback loop where you're just kind of hearing from people who have similar points of view? Or I don't know why how or why that works. Why wouldn't you just let people just, like Elon Musk, for example, right? If I go on Twitter, I don't follow Elon Musk. I have no interest in Elon Musk, but you can guarantee, even though I go, I'm not interested in this post, Elon Musk will be at the top of my list every time spouting off about something on Twitter.
Yeah. So the first half of that is like the black box of algorithms. The second half of that is Elon Musk, and you don't have to be a genius to work out that the
How he
CEO or
does that?
whatever. Yeah, that he I mean, he's the worst. And he manages. I have the same thing. I don't follow him either, and somehow I always end up on the For You page and it's always Elon Musk.
Yeah,
So I think you have to think about manipulative things,
yeah,
which I expect is going on there, and then algorithms which kind of passively manipulate. So one of the problems with you promoting your podcast, and I'm not a marketing guy at all, but that the passive algorithms like stuff that makes you angry. They like
mhm,
hot
yeah,
emotions.
yeah,
They like stuff that's going to get people enraged, which is why when you go on Twitter, you
yeah,
that's what you see,
yeah,
right? So they also like what's already been established as engaging, right? So
yeah,
if you're trying to become engaging, it's much harder to poke through
yeah,
that thing. And
yeah,
unfortunately, when you're trying to do something positive like mental health awareness, A, there's a lot of competition out there, and B, it's not getting people pissed off
it's
enough
not
to
getting
get it into the
people
major
riled
audience.
up. No, that's we try and do the opposite, really. But okay, so what would you say are some of the practical strategies people can use to manage anxiety or depression linked with social media use?
The main thing to realize is that the default settings of any kind of technology that you have, and I'm thinking mainly anything through your smartphone,
Yeah.
right, is not built for your sanity or mental health, right? The basic default settings. So most of us leave it as is, and that's problematic,
Mhm.
right? So my kind of go-to place is do not be passive to your apps, make active decisions about how you want to engage with them. So, one of the simplest, healthiest decisions I ever made was taking my email off my iPhone. In
Okay.
that way, yeah, because like one day, as you do, because none of us have the patience to just sit in silence or not distract ourselves with something anymore. I was waiting at a bus stop, bored, looked at my email on my phone, saw a work related email that caused me a great deal of anxiety
Yeah.
that I needed to really be at my desk to resolve.
Right.
Right. So I'm sitting there for an hour and a half between, trying to respond on my phone, but not being able to, not having the material that I need. And just kind of realized like I could have opened this email an hour and a half later when I
Mhm.
had everything I needed to deal with it and not be
Mhm.
troubled by this anxiety. And looked back and saw how many times that happened. And I just kind of thought, I don't know what your language setting is on your podcast, but I thought, fuck this. I'm not going to subject myself to this kind of anxiety anymore.
Yeah.
And I just took it off. I just turned my accounts off. And now I only approach my email when I can sit down and I'm
Right.
ready,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
So that's really simple and that works for me, right? But it's also things like just turning off notifications, I think, on just about everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look at your phone, you don't have these red dots glaring at you,
Yeah.
causing you to react.
Uh-huh.
You choose
Uh-huh.
to look at your Instagram or Facebook or whatever
Hmm.
and answer it. That's like the technical level. On the emotional level, it's really simple self-awareness, right? So if you're doom scrolling and you realize that your anxiety levels are increasing, stop doom scrolling. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds really
Yeah.
simple, but I think people forget to look in. They think they're doing something that's pleasurable for them, and it's not. So
Hmm.
it's really kind of keeping a gentle, compassionate awareness and just say, you know what, this is not what I need to be doing right now.
Hmm.
Whether it's watching a fourth episode of something junky on Netflix that the first two kind of got you out of your busy day, but the third one started to become something else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Really kind of seeing when that turns inside of you and making a choice to like log off, do something different, do something
Uh-huh.
nourishing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was seeing something on and don't worry about the swearing, by the way, me and Paul swear all the time. Um I was seeing something, a comedian, sweary comedian, who was on saying about mindfulness in kids. And he's like, in the 80s, we were mindful all the fucking time because we sat on a bus and we watched condensation drip down the window, mindful. We were, because we didn't do, and that's the thing. When was the last time, like, you went to the toilet and sat on the, and sat for a number two and just, you know, and that seems weird now. They used to sit there. I mean, maybe you used to read the paper, but you now, well, me, and I'm sure thousands and millions of others are just, like you say, catching up with emails or playing games or WhatsApping friends. There's almost no time when you're not, there's no sort of, like I say, mindfulness time. There's no times when we're now sat on the bus watching the condensation roll down the window. It's always like, oh, I'll just,
Mhm.
whether it's an online shop or it's whatever it is. There's no kind of switch off, and I suppose it's getting that balance, isn't it? I don't know what I was gonna come on to detoxes, where you think a detox is a good thing, or whether we just need to be more, let's say, in inverted commas, sensible about how we manage our time. Because I mean, sorry, there's so many questions. Like I said to you at the beginning, there's so many questions. What? So let's go on that. I'll make a note of the next one I want to ask about.
Okay.
Do you think a detox is a good thing, or do you think it's just about managing our time or our apps better?
I think you can do both, but the second thing about managing it over the long term is more important.
Hmm.
So the thing that you were starting about in the beginning about, sitting on the bus watching the condensation, we are actually losing, excuse me, we're losing the skill of being able to sit with ourselves,
Yeah.
which is actually a really important skill, not only because it stops us from being distracted and it gets us off this kind of dopamine cycle, but when you're a bit stiller, it gives your unconscious emotional system time to process
Hmm.
stuff,
Hmm.
right? So we just tend to avoid that through distraction, which makes us more anxious. Like we might distract ourselves because we're afraid of being anxious, but actually, if we sit still, learn to be with that anxiety, that's better work than
Hmm.
avoiding it. So I think detoxes are a great way to start, whether it's a digital detox, a Stoptober, a dry January. It teaches a kind of discipline. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to drink for the month of January,
Yeah.
but it's not going to be great if I start February, drinking every night for the
Yeah. Yeah.
first week, right? But it does clean out the system. And I'm kind of using it as a metaphor, right?
Yeah.
If you decide to take a digital detox, also use that time to kind of down regulate, see what it's like not to be distracted all the time, learn to tolerate your emotions, but also make proactive decisions about when you go back. This is generally how I'm going to be doing it.
Hmm.
And yeah, we all slip, and I slip all the time. And I did my number two this morning doing the New York Times crosswords. It's like nobody needs to be a saint about it, but
No,
at
no.
least be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, what I wrote down there was, I'm interested in, like, doom scrolling, because we all know about doom scrolling. You sit there and you just, what is it about doom scrolling that hooks us in? And is there certain things, like you said, about incendiary things? Is that what they're trying to do? What is actually happening when you're sat there? because I've done it before. We've all done it before. And you sit there for 5, 10 minutes and go, I've just done nothing for the last 5 minutes other than flick through my phone. What is actually happening in our brains when to sort of how do they hook us in?
Right. So what people don't seem to link together because it doesn't seem particularly logical
Mm,
is that a negative feeling can also be addictive or can be enjoyable in a funny kind of a way. And the reason why it's enjoyable is because it's sensational. You feel something. Yeah. So you kind of get into a cycle of sensing your outrage or your upset or your anger, and that regulates you up into a sense of high sensation,
yeah,
right? And we kind of like, just as animals, we kind of like being high sensation. That's why we don't like sitting there in the toilet doing nothing but pooing or sitting on the bus looking at condensation,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then what happens is you get regulated up to that level of intensity so that when the intensity drops, it's a little bit like a drug addiction. It is kind of, it's a
Yeah.
dopaminergic cycle, right?
Uh-huh.
You get used to that high level of sensationality, and then you're bored more quickly when you're not. And then we can get onto the whole ADHD thing, but sort of like this does not happen in a vacuum. Like we are all upregulated
Yeah.
to massive distraction, short-term attention, hyperactive attention to stuff, and it's affecting us massively as a culture. We're all regulated up.
And do you think that only gets worse with, I was going to mention porn then
It's
again,
the same thing.
when you're sort of desensitized to it, so then you need more to get that hit, and it just becomes a spiral of you need more doom scrolling, you need more news, you need. I mean, the other day, and I don't know whether I should be proud of this or not. Somebody said about something about Florida.
Hmm.
I was like, sorry, what's happening in Florida? They went, well, all the storms and the floods and the hurricanes, and I'm like, I don't know anything about it. And there's something that's quite nice about that because I think the news generally, again, it's not ever good news, is it? It's always bad news, and you can get into the cycle of, nuclear war, environmental disasters, riots on the streets, whatever it is, and just what is that going to do to anyone's mood when you're just constantly bombarded with that? And I find it beneficial just not to watch the news. But I guess it's similar with social media that there's that fear of missing out. Well, what is going on in the world that maybe things that I should know about and things that I should be informed about, and
Hmm.
again, it's that double-edged sword, isn't it, of getting a balance, I guess.
Well, we're back to the default settings and the choice settings, right? The default settings is you get fed all of this stuff and you
Mm,
consume all of this stuff. And it's like that's not good, right? If you want to be informed, try and make good choices about how you inform yourself
yeah,
and then don't go that extra level. But I wanna say something about porn too, I think.
go
Um
for it.
well, I'm just thinking, I mean, I think we're probably about around the same age-ish. And when I was a teenager, there would be like four porn magazines going round a group of friends
There'd
that
be
what
yeah,
they
there'd be the one guy at school who's got access to the yeah,
yeah, and you could look at this one magazine with static pictures on it for a week before you traded it in for something else, and it's like that's what you had, right?
yeah,
And then you have videotapes or whatever, but like you see doom scrolling in the way people consume porn. It's the same kind of thing. Like rather than a picture or a movie, it becomes short snippets
hmm,
of more and more and more and faster and faster and faster because we need to have that, but we don't need to. The addiction is to the novelty, increasing the sensation. So getting bored of something really quickly and seeking more and more and more.
hmm,
And this is where the Buddhists had it right 3,000 years ago. You'll never fill the cup
yeah, yeah,
by seeking more. You have to find a way to unattach yourself
hmm,
from that need.
hmm, yeah. No, and I guess that's kind of what we're doing the podcast is to try and find out what that thing is. And obviously, for some people, it'll be you know, I do cold water therapy when I can be. It doesn't ever get any easier. But Paul's not going there. But no, I mean, well, again, it was one of my questions for later on. But what do you do? What do you find that helps? Aaron Balick center himself and get back to some kind of, for want of a better expression, peace and harmony.
Yeah. Okay. I don't do it as well as I'd like to still. I have to keep coming back to it. But for me, it's choosing times to limit or take away any kind of stimulation. So it's really easy for me. I've got a dog, I got to walk him 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And when I'm not paying attention to myself, the first walk is to the Today Show. The second walk is to the 1 o'clock news. And the third walk is to PM, right? I'm a Radio 4 listener.
Yeah.
And then when I make the decision in the morning, it's like I don't need to listen to bad news this morning.
Hmm.
I'm going to leave my earbuds and my phone in the drawer, and I'm just going to walk the dog and pay attention to my dog who wants to have attention paid to him.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay attention to my surroundings. I'm going to do kind of a walking meditation. I'm going to wonder about stuff. I'm going to daydream. I come back from that, I just feel 100 times better than when I'm listening to the news. And I wonder, why am I choosing to listen to that in the morning?
Hmm.
So walks, leaving the phone at home, for me, meditation works really well. And it's difficult to maintain a regular practice of it. But when I manage to maintain a regular practice of it, I find it's really helpful because that's another enforced lull in one's life where you just allow your thoughts to roam freely. And I was just going to say physical exercise, we now know just has so many benefits on all levels. Again, it's hard to get in there regularly, but when you're doing it regularly and you stop, you really feel the difference.
Are you a runner?
No, I hate running.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really,
What's your go-to exercise then?
I usually do I do a class at the gym or I do high intensity training. So,
Oh, okay.
like 60
Yeah.
seconds full on. And sometimes that involves running, but I can't stand getting on a treadmill. I used to run cross country in school and I
Right, and then
kind of hate it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Are you a
Well,
runner?
I'm no, no. Paul will hate me for saying this because I mention it all the time because I'm now about 17 stone and far from an athlete, but I used to do triathlons very, very badly,
Oh,
I should.
wow.
But then kids came along and you need a lot of time to train for, even to be a really bad triathlete, you need lots of time to train. But no, I'm toying with I've started the couch to 5K again, just getting back into that because again, I find that it's very helpful. It's not so much keeping fit, it's more just clearing my head.
Hmm.
And I script write. I work in construction, but I script write, and I find that all my jigsaw pieces align, and I can work out little knots in storylines and characters when I'm running because I'm not necessarily thinking about. And then I think I've mentioned this before that when you speak to like Olympic athletes, they're in the zone and they are super concentrated on whatever it is that they're doing. And I'm like the exact opposite because if I'm thinking about running, I'm thinking, oh, I think I've got a niggle in my ankle, or oh, I think I've got a bit of a stitch or whatever. If I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for tea, or storylines, plot lines, or whatever, and then before you know it, you go, oh, I've actually run another half a kilometer and I've not been thinking about it. So I'm better when I'm not in the zone. My brain needs to be somewhere completely different.
Well,
Um,
I'll tell you what was a real revelation to me. And I think there are two ways you can use exercise too, which is interesting. So I did indoor climbing, did a course in indoor climbing
okay.
ages ago. And when you are, whatever, 80 meters up a wall, trying to secure your next move, you can't think about anything but securing your next move. So it's not thinking about T or characters or script, right? It really, really focuses you. And I had this amazing, really, I was like, I think that's the first time I haven't had a thought in my head in a long time. So that really works for focus. And I don't know if you're familiar with Cal Newport's work, deep work,
I'm not.
where he suggests, that we don't make time for creative work and idea work. And he suggests going on, a 3 hour walk with an idea or a thought and use that, which sounds like how you might use running sometimes
Okay, sorry,
to
what's his
work
name? I'm
through.
going to check this out.
Cal Newport, deep work. I feel like I have it here somewhere. Here. So I feel like for me, because I'm a cerebrally biased human being, that I will tend to think, if I'm going to be doing anything and be thinking about something,
Yeah.
but things that are structured, like climbing, Tai Chi, yoga. I'm not a particularly athletic person, but I found pad work in boxing super
Okay.
helpful in there too, because you have to, you're learning these moves and you have
Yeah.
to keep on it, or,
Yeah.
someone will hit you in the face, right? So, so for focus, dance works as well, like stuff that you have to learn and do with your body. It's physical. And then stuff like rowing, jogging, walking, maybe even swimming is a kind of you can kind of do some deep work there. You can
Yeah.
think while you're exercising, but they do two very different things for
Uh-huh.
you.
Uh-huh. No, it's interesting. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, you've got things like, I mean, I was thinking even not exercise, but even like things that you're learning. So if you're learning to play the guitar, I would imagine that's a very immersive. You're not thinking about anything else because you're thinking about where your fingers are going. You're thinking about what you're doing. It's almost when I remember when I was learning to drive a car, my dad's like, when you learn to drive a car, you'll just be like looking at the road ahead and looking out for dangers and you won't really be thinking about. I'm like, I'm never going to get to that because I'm thinking, well, put the clutch down and change gear, and you're thinking about all those things. And like you say, you're in the moment, and that's why going back to the cold water therapy, for me, you don't think of when your body hits that water that's whatever degrees it is, 5 degrees or whatever, you're not thinking about, oh yeah, did I leave the oven on? Or oh,
Hmm.
I really need to, because you're just thinking, Jesus Christ, it's cold. You're not, and you cannot do anything else other than be in that moment. So yeah, no, I'm gonna check out that book then, Deep Work, Cal Newport. I'll dig that out. Going back to what something that you said about meditation. Can
Hmm.
I ask you about your meditation? How do you do that? The reason I ask is because, again, like many people, I struggle to sit and do, in inverted commas, nothing. So I've got this app called, again, double-edged sword, Luminate. I don't know if you've heard about this. That flat
I've
it
I don't know, but I've heard of it.
it uses your light on your phone. So you shut your eyes and it uses the light on your phone to sort of flash and plays plinky plonky music and whatever. Now I find that really helpful because again, I'm not sitting there thinking of nothing or trying to think of nothing. I'm going, oh yeah, because you do get like this kaleidoscopic effect of colors and it's almost like looking through through a kaleidoscope. So I'm thinking, oh, there's a cloud of pink and all that. There's a green coming in, and I'm focused on that. But sitting doing nothing. So I was just interested to know how do you do that? And do you use an app or are you able to just sit with yourself, so to speak?
I do find it helpful to have an app and have a guided meditation, but I'm moving more towards trying to leave that behind. So
Mm,
I think it's a good gateway drug to meditation, and I think it's like exercise. Like find something that you like and that you can do and that isn't torturous, right?
yeah.
And is a short enough amount of time that you slowly extend. The app that I've used, which I found really beneficial, is called Balance. And what I like about the Balance app is they're guided meditations. There's like a series of 10 less, like there's three foundations, three intermediates, three advanced. And what they do is they give you different methods of meditation. So one will be a breath focus, one will be a body scan,
Okay.
one will be eyes open, one will be looking at an object. And then when you do them, it asks you what helps. It's like, do you want the narrator to talk more or talk less? Do you like the breath work or do you like the body scan? And it helps you find
Mm-hmm.
what works best
It
for you.
works. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I did that whole thing and there's a bunch of singles as well, but I did the whole like through the advanced and then I would let it go and try and do it on my own. And then when I started getting stuck, I might do a course again.
Right, okay. Okay. I mean, we do have I see a psychologist, Dr. Jan. So Dr. Jan's been on a couple of times on the podcast, and we were going to do a top five, and the irony or the juxtaposition isn't lost on us. The top five apps for mental health. So we might have to put balance on the list then.
Yeah, try it out. I think they're still doing like a year's free
Are they?
trial, actually. Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
have a look. So
I'll
you
have
can
a look at them.
definitely
Yeah.
practice it and see if you like it. Yeah.
Okay. Right. What was I coming on to? I saw one of your posts talking about people giving mental health advice, in inverted commas, on social media. and I think you've got 91% don't have a professional qualification. More than 80% of them of that mental health advice is misleading, and 14% of it potentially damaging.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's also, I think, kind of a problem that's embedded with psychology too. I think psychology is different from physics in the sense that physics is really complicated.
Hmm.
And actually, actually, on one level, psychology isn't because we're all human beings. We all experience the world. So we have a sense for it because it's psychology is what it's like to be you,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So there's a whole common sense level to psychology where you can get a confidence in thinking that you're understanding something. But then there's this whole other level about what the fuck are you supposed to do with your understanding, right? Which is a problem even in therapy. You know, people come to therapy, they're like, I know I keep repeating the same thing, or I know this is illogical, or but I keep doing it. And
Yeah.
that's where the expertise is.
Yeah.
So it's one thing, and then again, it's the short attention span thing. So it's one thing to like take a piece of an idea that resonates and feels right and says, this is blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
This is, this is what insecure attachment looks like. If you have this, 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 and this, you're
Yeah.
insecurely attached, right? And there's probably going to be some truth to that. But the question is the person saying that know anything, have they read John Bowlby? Do they know anything about attachment therapy? Have that,
Hmm.
or did they just ask ChatGPT to throw up some information that they put on TikTok? And then, yeah, what are you supposed to do with that?
Hmm.
And the real dark side is then people start saying, oh, well, I'm insecurely attached, or I have an anxiety disorder, or I just listened to 3 TikTok videos that convinced me I'm ADHD, or I have autism, or, it's like these are really complex
Yeah.
ideas, and it's not helpful. In an educative way, it's helpful to learn,
Hmm.
but in a follow-through way, that's not where it's at.
Hmm. No, I mean, I've done these online tests, and yeah, I think I've got ADHD. And I mean, I don't think I've got ADHD, but according to the tests, and yes, I have the certain traits that you could associate with ADHD, but do I think I've got it? No. But you do the tests online, yeah, I've definitely got it. And maybe that is the answer. Oh, that explains, yeah, I've got ADHD because then that explains why I'm doing X, Y, Z. And people go down these rabbit holes of, like you say, taking this, I was gonna say advice, taking this information as gospel.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a dangerous place to be.
But see, even where you're starting there is on an assumption about what ADHD is, right?
Hmm.
And there's a lot of disagreement about that, right? So it's like even if you take the official psychiatric test, right, which is it's between 30 and 40, 50 questions. I can't remember what it is.
Okay.
Probably get in trouble for saying this, but it's not super distant from a test you'll get in
I
Cosmopolitan
was going to
magazine.
say
Like it,
yes, yeah. Do you? Yeah, there's kind of leading questions, maybe.
yeah, I mean, look, I've got the DSM behind me. I could read, I can't say it off the top of my head, but it's like if you have 8 of 10 of these things over the period of a month, you get this classification,
Yeah.
right? It's very generalized anxiety disorder too. It's very hard to find people who wouldn't match the criteria for that.
Mm.
Both of these diagnoses have disorder in the words, right? Now, for some people, they will experience anxiety or attention deficit in such a disordered way that it really impairs their lives.
Mm.
For most people, it's just a way, it's like a neurodivergence, a way of being in the world. It's not disordered. And then there's the other level of culture making us all ADHD,
Yeah.
right? It's like these are really complicated things. Am I going to answer yes to all these questions if I take some measures to reduce my dopaminergic treadmill
Uh-huh.
situation?
Uh-huh.
Probably. I've become more ADHD in my across my life. I know for sure.
Because you're just
I
getting
was
bombarded with more shit.
absolutely.
Mm.
And I was proclived to that when I was younger, but I know it's worse, and I know it's worse because of the environment that I exist
Hmm.
in.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I'm having a conversation. I am genuinely because again, it's that self-perpetuating thing where I'm going back to making it all about me again, but with the promoting the podcast, you try and promote the podcast, and then you're going on the post. Well, I better do it on Facebook. I better do it on TikTok. You better do it on Instagram, and then you're going on. Well, how many likes have I got on Instagram? Is that posting better because I've done it at 5 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the evening? And it's just I'm spending far more time for very little reward
Hmm.
posting all this stuff and then analyzing all this stuff and creating content. And you're like, I don't think there's any point. I think it's that thing. What I don't know who was it said it, build it and they will come. Do the thing, and if people like it, they'll tell their friends, which I think is still the best way to actually get out there and have the conversation in real life, in inverted commas, because you do get sucked into this just world of you just checking yourself all the time
Yeah.
and and success again in inverted commas is what, because you get 10 likes, not 5 likes on a post or whatever. I mean that's I see it with I do mentoring at a local school, and you see it with their self-worth. Will come on to I've got two young daughters myself, but you see their self-worth isn't necessarily how well they're doing at school or how well their day-to-day relationships are with their peers. It's how many likes or how many comments they're getting on their TikToks, or how viral that's gone. And I was going to come on to my kids are 4 and 7. Got two girls, and I often think of the younger generations who are immersed, sorry, in technology, which is something again that we didn't have. And I've seen reports that in 20 years' time we'll look back on this similarly to how we looked at smoking and just gone, how did we
Yeah.
let this happen? And I know that in Scotland, I don't know whether it's the same in England, but in Scotland they're talking about banning phones, or some schools are banning phones, which I get. And again, I suppose it's that balance, because you want your kids to be able to navigate the world of social media and the world of technology. I see. Again, I'm likening it to the when I was at school, you had the one BBC computer, because we didn't really have computer classes were just starting when I was at school, and you had the one BBC computer that everyone crowded around. And I guess is that the same thing, that should you let kids have their phones at school so they can actually learn, or go, no, you're there to learn X, Y, Z, and put them in the box and you'll get them at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, that's the whole subject in itself, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in there because you need to make a distinction between how young people manage their social lives, right? Which they're doing through devices, which you don't want to just unilaterally take away from them. There's what some parents allow and other parents don't allow, which can put some kids at a disadvantage, which is why it's important maybe to have policies. There's learning, there's digital awareness, which I think doesn't necessarily come with, being allowed to have a phone in school. But there's also like, again, and we start to sound like a bunch of old fogies here, but when I was a kid, when I was a kid, put myself in terrifically dangerous situations with no way of calling for help, and like had to figure out a way
Mm,
out. And I don't think we give young people the opportunity to find out for themselves what they're capable of. And Sherry Turkle, who's at MIT, she's really early theorist in technology and psychology. She tells the story about how kind of, I think she uses 9/11 as an example, but she's like, after 9/11, everybody felt like they needed to have a phone in case there was an emergency.
mm,
And that's when they started to buy their kids phones and all this stuff. And she was saying, 9/11 happened that day, but most days there isn't an emergency,
mhm,
but we behave as if every day is a 9/11. And I don't want to live like that. I'm
mhm,
paraphrasing her.
mhm,
And I think that's right. We feel like if we send our kid to school without a phone, they're going to disappear. Something terrible is going to happen. We live in a state of like high danger,
mhm,
and we rob, I think, our children of the capacity to develop resilience, resourcefulness, to experience anxiety and find a way through. I'm not talking about dropping them in the jungle and making them find their way out, right? Just letting them walk to school, giving
yeah,
them regular skills to navigate the worlds in which they live in
mhm,
without feeling like they need to call home to resolve everything.
yeah, yeah. And I think, if we're, I don't know, there's a nuclear summit I think next week, but if we're all here in 20, 30 years time, I suppose it's what that landscape looks like, because I mean it's all, you think of again when we were at school, what we were learning. Yeah, I mean there's jobs now. I'll give you an example. My daughter, I was trying to explain. She was asking me what the pedal was on the left of the car, and I was trying to explain that was the clutch, and I was trying to explain to my 7-year-old daughter how the clutch works and what, and I was like, and I got sort of, I don't know, 5 minutes into this description. I went, do you know what? You probably won't need to worry about this because by the time you learn to drive in another 10 years' time, I don't think there's going to be, is it going to be driverless cars? Is it going to be, I'm talking about like French. We would do French at school. I'm not suggesting nobody should do French, but part of you goes, well, do we really need to do that? Because you can now just speak into your phone and it will just translate it. Yes, it's a good skill to have, but there's so many things that you're like, well, what is the landscape going to look like in, 10, 20 years time? What sort of skills? I mean, it's not, it's a rhetorical question because we don't know, but I wonder what skills you're going to need to navigate the landscape, physical and technological, in a decade, 2 decades.
Well, what I would propose is it still helps on a neurological level to use a clutch and to learn a language,
Yeah.
right? And just, I grew up in the States. Even when I was growing up, most cars were automatic. My dad obviously was an old fogey when I was a kid, and he was like, you cannot get your driver's license until you can drive manual. Like he insisted I drive manual. My mother, bless her, one of the best things she made me do was learn how to touch type in high school. She's like,
Okay.
you're going to take typing. It's great that I love that I can type,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I come, I come to live in Europe and there's no automatic cars. So it's like really great that I know how to do a manual. I just have to do it with my left hand now instead of my right hand, or I can't even remember which hand you do it with anymore in which country. Right. But to multitask a clutch, to learn the grammar of another language, it's good for your brain,
Mm.
right? And whether you're going to be designing artificial intelligence or doing something else, I feel pretty confident that having those skills is going to be good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If nothing, I like you say, it builds, like say, even just walking to school is exercise. It's, rather than going in your driverless car, or I mean, it is frightening. Like say, I would say that we're not saints, but we don't let our kids go on, well, certainly not on social media at the moment. But I think that time's going to come shortly with, the discussion, at least with the 7-year-old. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a few mornings where the first thing the 3-year-old, 4-year-old will say when she wakes up is, "Mummy or Daddy, can I go on your phone?" Because she just wants to play games on the phone.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining they don't use phones she's at nursery. They don't use phones at nursery. I wouldn't say I'm particularly spend a lot of time playing games on my phone. So it's not something that she's learned behavior, but she's just got this thing in her head that she gets a dopamine fix or whatever because she wants to play whatever it is game on the
It's
phone. And
it's what it's built for, right? Like
ah,
it's what it's built to do is to get attention, and particularly in developing brains, right?
mhm,
It's like that's well, there's good news and there's bad news there, right? So when it comes to things like social media and managing relationships, really where your kids are at now, what you've done between them being born and now is really the most important thing,
mhm,
right? So paying attention to your children, recognizing them for who they are, listening, building attachment, having complex interpersonal relationships with them. So when the challenges of social media come, those attachment patterns,
mhm,
you just want to, they're laid very early, right? So it's like resilience.
mhm.
And in relation to the thing we were just talking about, like manual transmissions and learning a language, it's actually, we have to do hard stuff. Like doing hard stuff is really important
Yeah.
because it teaches discipline and patience and follow through. And everything in the world is made to make things easier,
Yeah.
right? So even if it's the challenges of sustaining the no, you can't have my phone right now,
Mhm.
sustaining you being able to sustain the meltdown, them being able to go through the meltdown and realizing that they're still going to be alive afterwards.
Yeah.
These are like massively important life skills to help you sustain disappointment later in life,
Mm.
breakups, difficulties in friend relationships, difficulties at work.
Yeah.
If everything's made too easy for us, we just don't develop the muscle to meet the world and its requirements.
And I guess the resilience.
Absolutely. Like
You never develop the resilience of, well, actually that didn't work out, or actually somebody's told me no.
yeah. You
Which
can't
comes off
develop resilience till you're knocked back, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't let my wife listen to this because she's already concerned about you know, so the most informative years are 1 to 4 or 1 to 7 or whatever. But yeah, we have this thing where obviously my youngest was born in the January of 2020. We then went into lockdown in the March, and
Mm.
then I was diagnosed with cancer in the September and given 6 months. So yeah, I don't know whether and the first one is I'll use the word sensible. She's very sensible and very grown up for a 7-year-old. The 3-year-old, listeners will know because she's made an appearance on several occasions, is like Animal off the Muppets. She's very cute. She's got bright blonde, curly hair, but she is just tuned to the moon. And I think that is a concern of me and my wife that, in terms of that first, particularly the first 2 years, was just with everything that was going on, carnage. And we really have no memory of really what happened in that first 2 years. But yeah, no, she's I say she's addicted to the phone, but I don't know what's made her like that's what she wants to do. She just wants to play on the phone.
Well, let me give you some good news for you
Okay.
and for your wife. And I may have the number a little bit wrong, so I'll have to double check it. But kind of the studies that come out of attachment and good enough parenting says you have to get it right around 30% of the time.
Okay.
That's what good enough is,
Right.
right? And it's all what we're talking about. Like it's not getting it right all the time because you need to get it wrong so that you can have the rupture and you can have the repair.
Mhm.
Yeah. And pandemic happening, you getting ill are real things that happened in the world that you do your best with. Like you don't get to not have real things happen, right? So you do the best you can. And that's also part of the preparation for human. I could have had it a whole ton better by my parents for sure, but then I wouldn't have come out as beautifully as I have now, without those kind of challenges. So trust, right,
Yeah.
that whatever the circumstances, that your intention
Mhm.
to be a good parent and to love your kids, will see you through.
Mhm. And again, the listeners will get bored with this, but this is that juxtaposition of, when I was diagnosed, I would have given anything to see them grow up because I didn't think I was going to get to see, Little's probably first birthday. And here we are 4 years later when we went to London to see Frozen, the musical. And she's in a Spider-Man onesie that's 3 sizes too small for her, but she refuses to wear anything else. And it's packed, right? We've got the change of the guard. It is rammed, and she's there just chucking her shoes into the crowd and just rolling around on the floor. And you're just like, this is just the worst. Will you? And you get back into that normality of, and then, it's not lost on me that you think back and go, this is all I ever dreamed of. This
Mhm.
is what I wanted to. And then there's the guilt associated with that. So but yeah, this too shall pass, as they say. It's a
What a
famous.
roller coaster.
Yeah, it's hence I'm still seeing a psychologist. But
But
Aaron,
therapy's great, right? Like too many people wait for the shit to hit the fan. Like,
yeah, yeah.
my big recommend, like go for therapy. Just go. And I know I'm biased and I'm a therapist, right? But I did it too. I did it nearly 10 years. It's one of the best investments I made in myself.
Hmm.
Therapy's great.
Hmm.
Find a good therapist, find a good match, and learn about yourself.
Yeah. Maybe don't do it. Don't find someone on TikTok.
Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. I
Maybe do
think word
due
of mouth is
diligence.
probably, yeah,
Do
due
you mind if we
diligence.
finish with some quick fire rounds? Well, quick fire round is the first question was how do you relax and unwind, which we've established by walking the dog.
Yes. In my fair bit of junky TV, I've got
And
to,
you,
I've got to own
what are
up
you
to.
what's your show at the minute? What are you watching?
I totally binged on this really bad Menendez brothers thing on Netflix, a fictionalization. I don't
Oh,
know if
is
you
that
remember
the
that.
two? Yeah, is that a recent thing? I think I've seen it
It's a
advertised.
Ryan Murphy thing. He
Is
did
it any
American
good?
Horror Story. It's terrible. I hated it and I like it's junk.
Okay.
I really like quality TV, like a big Sopranos fan and like
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that like really high quality stuff.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I just watch some junky
Just
stuff
want some
because it's been a
rubbish.
hard day. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife likes Grey's Anatomy, and I saw yesterday, I think that they're now in series 21.
Holy crap.
I mean, surely to God, this must have run out of accidents in Seattle or wherever it's based. But
Slow Horses, that's really good. High
very
quality.
good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I haven't watched the third series yet. Someone recommended to me Brassic. I do like a bit of dark humor. Yeah, based in the north of England. That's very good. But okay. So I appreciate it's spelt different, but have you ever been to the Isle of Arran?
I have.
Excellent. When did you go and for what purpose?
I went in 1994,
Okay.
I think. That's when I arrived in the UK and I was interrailing. So I went everywhere that year.
And you did you see Arran and thought that's the place for me?
I didn't even think, I don't even think I thought I went to Galway and then there was a boat and I got on it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean Arran is not far from it's the port is about an hour from here. So we
Oh,
go
am I confusing errands? Because they're in
oh,
Scotland or because I thought I
Scotland,
went,
yeah.
then what is, I
Where
went
did
to
you
some
go?
islands outside of Galway. I thought that was
Oh
Aran
no.
Island.
No, the Isle of Arran is off the west coast of Scotland.
I haven't been there. I have
I
been
would
to Orkney and Shetland, but I've not been to Arran.
okay. Well, I would thoroughly recommend a visit to Arran. It's very, very beautiful.
Well, now I feel embarrassed. I need to find out what those islands are off
Do
Galway and see how that.
message me later and tell me what the
Okay. All right.
last question. It's a biggie.
hmm
If you could ban one person from social media for a year, who would it be?
It's a toss up.
I think I know. If it was me, I know it's a toss up between two people.
Yeah,
But
go.
go
You're
on,
probably right.
go on. Who are
Yeah,
your?
Trump and Musk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually not that difficult a question, is it?
No, they're both so toxic.
How do you think it's going to go in America this year? Well, next month. Next month, geez,
Yeah, I'm pretty worried. I follow the polls religiously. I still can't comprehend why they're as close as they have been
oh.
anyway, but they're tightening, and our electoral college system really puts the Democrats at a disadvantage.
Mm.
So I'm hoping for the best and expecting the worst.
Yeah, yeah. Well, fingers crossed that by the time this goes out, um, we'll have had some decent news.
I
Uh,
really hope so, because
let's
that's
hope
that's
so.
going to be a real blow for the world, I think, if it
Yeah, yeah,
doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not watch the news, Aaron, just in
Okay.
case it happens. But Aaron, thank you so much for giving up your time. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. That's been really enlightening. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Oh, it's been a really enjoyable conversation. I love
And
talking to you, so thank
yeah,
you.
enjoy your weekend.
And you too.
All
Take
right,
care.
take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
How good was that? Loved chatting to Dr. Aaron Balick. And yeah, hopefully it's given you something to think about in the new year. It certainly gave me something to think about. And you may have seen on the socials that I was trying to cut down on my time spent on my phone. Just stopped like checking my phone. I've turned the alerts off. I remember when you like in the olden days when you used to have like a Nokia phone in the days of text, and that, like you say, I think that's when it all started because you would check your phone and get that little dopamine hit every time you had a text message, and now that's obviously amplified 800 million times with the tech that we now carry around with us. So, no, I thought it was very interesting what you said about emails, taking emails off the phone. For me, I'm going to take the game Fruit Merge off my phone because rather than doing stuff, I will go, well, I could send that email or I could do something that's mildly important. Or I could see if I could put two limes together and make a grapefruit. Um, spend an enormous amount of time wasted playing silly games. But no, I think there's a lot to take in there, and certainly a lot that I will take on board. We still haven't decided on a format for 2025, other than we think we'll go back to the once a fortnight. Then if we have time for additional guests or mind bites, then we'll do that. Just to reiterate, Paul has not been sacked. Okay, he's just busy, and I think that's part of the problem. We want to do something positive and put that out there and keep people engaged and have the conversation and feel that we're part of this tribe. We're all coming at this from a slightly different angle, but we all have mental health, whether that be good or bad. However, I think for our own mental health, i.e. me and Paul's, then we don't want to put the pressure on and feel that we have to get episodes out every week. So I think we will go with fortnightly. Then anything more we can do is a bonus, or not a bonus, depending on your viewpoint. I think, however, next week there shouldn't be an episode. However, I think I might put out Jan's New Year's resolution episode from the beginning of last year, as I think that would, if people haven't heard that, then we'll maybe have a chat around that. Dr. Jan obviously coming back for 2025. Obviously, I'm not even going to attempt doing the housekeeping. That's Paul's gig, and we know what happened when Gail tried to do it, so I'm not even going to fall into that housekeeping booby trap. What I would say about these doing it fortnightly, we actually totted up the other day that we had 25 potential guests lined up. Now, if we're doing that fortnightly, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that's a year's worth of guests. So, whilst I'm not doing the housekeeping, if you would like to sign up to the newsletter, and so you can see what guests are coming up for 2025, who has been bagged, some very interesting names in there, not to give too much away. I believe the link is on our link tree. Sign up for the newsletter. I don't send it out very often, so you'll get one, I think, when an episode comes out, just reminding you that the episode's out. And you need to put the merch link on there. People have been buying merch. Wow, imagine the joy on people's faces when they woke up Christmas morning and unwrapped their presents to find some Mind Cake merch. Oh, you lucky buggers. What else? Sauna. If you're a regular listener, you'll know that, yes, the sauna that came with the ice bath or vice versa. And I put it on to sell because I thought I've had it now for, 6 months? And I've not used it. However, I've had a lot of people over the Christmas period telling me the benefits to do with sleep and the benefits to do with immune system and whatever. So do you know what? Seeing as I've got it, I am going to use it and see whether it does have any benefits to do with sleep. And you probably tell from my voice, I've been struggling a bit with the old chest infections again. So yes, whether it just helps clear out the pipes. Yes, I'm going to give that a go. And I know there's a lot of things on our to-do list, which hopefully if we're doing it fortnightly, we'll have time to explore these things. Which kind of brings me on to the 5-year plan. When I say the 5-year plan, not for the podcast, you'll be pleased to know, I mean for post-cancer. So I will be 5 years since my diagnosis in September, and was very taken by our episode that we did with Rachel, who, Baldy Rachel as she's now known, who runs obviously ultra marathons. And I was tempted to, because I want to kind of stick my 2 fingers up to cancer. And in September, 5 years is, quite the milestone, medically, physically and personally as well. But medically, I think if you get to 5 years, they seem to think you've got a fighting chance, so to speak. And I want to mark it with something, I was going to say remarkable, but something memorable. However, and you could, so rather than me training to do an ultra marathon, right? I'm 51 years old now. It's the time element and the enjoyment element. And so whilst it would be quite the statement, do I have the energy and time and inclination to do one? You can do like a backyard one. So I think Rachel mentioned you do a backyard one where they run 4 miles every hour, and then you just keep going on the hour, every hour, 4 miles, 4 miles, 4 miles, and you just see how many you can do. And it's left to the last man or woman standing. I think she said the record was like 4.5 days. Now, there ain't no chance I'm lasting 4.5 days. But you think if you could do, I don't know, 5 laps, 5 hours, 20 miles, that's pretty good, right? But so alternative is I'm going to put the poll out. It's totally self-indulgent, but I'm going to put a poll out because I need to think of my own mental health and well-being and injuries and, yes, another chest infection. So firstly, do I do a 10K and try and beat my PB from probably 13 years ago, which is quite the ask in itself, but you could dedicate more time or concentrate your time just doing a 10K? Or do I do a half marathon, of which I've only done one ever before, and try and beat my PB, which I think was 2 hours 12? Might have been slightly less than that. But try and beat that as a 51-year-old cancer surviving person. Or do I bite the bullet and go for an ultra marathon? I'd be interested to know. Or do I do something completely different? I think I know the answer, but if you have any suggestions, I'm going to put a poll on the episode. So please vote with what you think. Or if you have any other suggestions for things I could do, maybe some crocheting or so like a tapestry or a big jigsaw, so a big piece jigsaw, then I'm all ears. I hope you are well. 2025 has found you well. And yes, let's try and build this community and look out for each other. And so I will round up this episode by saying thank you for listening. Be kind to yourself and get yourself some cake. Take care.
Let's start a podcast about our